At Atlanta's Gate B-47, Major Lauren Kim, a Medal of Honor recipient, faces public humiliation when Gate agent Sam Rodriguez mocks her medal, questioning her heroism. Passengers join in, filming and jeering, until an elderly Western II veteran's salute shifts the atmosphere. As tensions peak, military jeeps arrive, heralding Colonel Elena Rodriguez, another Medal of Honor recipient. Her presence demands respect, exposing Sam's ignorance. The crowd's mockery turns to awe as Lauren's heroic actions in Afghanistan are revealed. What happens next? Will the terminal unite in honor, or will prejudice prevail? The truth of courage is about to unfold. If Major Lauren Kim's story of courage inspires you, support our channel. Subscribe, share, and join us to honor unsung heroes. Your support amplifies their voices, spreading stories of valor and unity. Comment below with a hero's name who inspires you. Let's celebrate courage together. The Atlanta airport terminal buzzed with the chaotic rhythm of a Sunday morning, a whirlwind of hurried travelers and overstuffed suitcases clogging the walkways. Gate B-47 was a microcosm of the frenzy. Families wrestling with cranky children, business travelers hunched over laptops, their fingers flying across keyboards, and the incessant drone of gate change announcements cutting through the air. The scent of overbrewed coffee mingled with the faint staleness of recycled air, creating a sensory haze that enveloped everyone. Amid the clamor, Major Lauren Kim sat quietly in a corner, her small frame unassuming in a simple blue blouse and dark slacks. At 39, she carried herself with a disciplined posture, her spine straight as if still standing at attention, though a wooden cane rested against her leg, a silent testament to battles fought and scars earned. Around her neck, the Congressional Medal of Honor gleamed, its blue ribbon adorned with 13 white stars catching the harsh fluorescent lights. Her dark eyes, sharp and vigilant, betrayed none of the pain she must have felt. Her hand rested lightly on the cane, but her grip was steady, resolute. Tucked inside her bag was a folded letter, its edges worn from countless readings. The words, penned by fallen comrades, were etched into her heart. "You carried us home. Now let us carry your name." Those words anchored her, a quiet reminder of why she endured. Across the gate area, Sam Rodriguez, a 28-year-old gate agent with meticulously styled hair and a pressed uniform, leaned over the counter, his eyes narrowing as they fixed on Lauren. The medal around her neck seemed to taunt him, its presence an affront to his assumptions. He couldn't reconcile the delicate figure before him with the weight of such an honor. Doubt festered in his mind, curling into a sneer that twisted his features. To Sam, the medal was a prop, a costume piece worn by someone who couldn't possibly have earned it. His skepticism wasn't just curiosity, it was a challenge, a need to assert control in front of the restless crowd. "Hey," he called out, his voice loud enough to cut through the terminal's din, ensuring every head turned. "Let me see that medal." Lauren's gaze lifted calmly, her expression composed despite the sudden spotlight. "Is there an issue with my boarding?" she asked, her voice steady, betraying none of the emotions roiling beneath the surface. She felt the weight of every eye in the terminal, the collective stare pressing against her like a physical force. But she had faced worse, far worse, on battlefields where hesitation meant death. "Just want to check if it's authentic," Sam replied, stepping around the counter with a swagger that invited attention. His words were sharp, laced with mockery. "That can't be a real Medal of Honor. Not on a woman." The terminal fell silent, the hum of conversation snuffed out as passengers turned to watch. Phones emerged from pockets, their cameras glinting like predatory eyes. Sam reached forward without asking, his fingers brushing the medal, flicking it carelessly so the ribbon bounced against Lauren's chest. The gesture was invasive, a violation of the sacred space she carried with her. "Is this real or just for show?" he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you win it for baking cookies or filing paperwork?" A security guard nearby chuckled, emboldened by Sam's audacity. "Should have given it to a real soldier, not some desk jockey," he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. The humiliation spread like wildfire. A college student in a hoodie snickered, zooming in with his phone. "Bet she got it for office work, not action," he jeered, his voice carrying the smugness of youth. Another passenger, a middle-aged man in a polo shirt, chimed in. Probably some diversity quota thing. Laughter rippled through the crowd, sharp and cruel, transforming the gate area into a carnival of mockery with Lauren as its unwilling centerpiece. Her knuckles whitened as she gripped her cane, the pressure grounding her against the tide of derision. Inside, her heart pounded, not with fear, but with a quiet fury forged in the crucible of combat. She had faced enemy fire, carried wounded soldiers through chaos, and made choices no one should have to make. The medal wasn't just metal, it was a symbol of lives saved, lives lost, and a promise kept. Yet here, in this crowded terminal, it was reduced to a prop for ridicule. She carefully retrieved the medal from Sam's grasp, her fingers steady as she adjusted it back into place with the precision of someone who had done so countless times. Her dark eyes flashed with a steel that had stared down death, but her face remained a mask of control. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. The terminal pulsed with cruel energy, a chorus of whispers and pointed fingers. Sam reveled in the attention, his chest puffed out as if he'd uncovered a fraud. "What's next?" he pressed, his voice performative, feeding off the crowd's amusement. "Are we supposed to believe women actually fight in combat now?" The laughter grew louder, a wave of sound that drowned out the airport's usual chaos. Some passengers shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting away, unwilling to challenge the mob's momentum. They saw the injustice but stayed silent, complicit in their inaction. Then, from across the waiting area, a faint sound broke through, a rhythmic clicking against the polished floor. An elderly man, frail and weathered, rose slowly from his seat. His faded army jacket, adorned with ribbons and patches from World War II, told stories of battles long forgotten by most. His hands trembled as he gripped his walker, each step a monumental effort, but his eyes burned with a fire that age couldn't dim. He recognized the medal around Lauren's neck, not just as a decoration, but as a sacred bond shared by those who had faced the unimaginable. His heart ached with fury at the disrespect he witnessed, but also with pride for the woman who bore it with such dignity. The crowd's laughter faded as passengers noticed the old veteran's approach. His walker clicked steadily, a metronome of determination cutting through the tension. Every step was a struggle, his body frail but his purpose unyielding. The terminal grew still, the air heavy with anticipation. When he reached Lauren, he paused, summoning every ounce of strength to stand as straight as his aging body allowed. With a trembling right hand, he raised a perfect military salute, his eyes locked on hers. The silence was absolute, the weight of his gesture silencing the crowd. "Medal of Honor," he said softly, his voice carrying the reverence of decades spent honoring sacrifice. It was a quiet declaration, but it resonated like a thunderclap, a reminder of the cost of valor and the respect it demanded. For Lauren, it was a lifeline, a moment of recognition that cut through the cruelty. Her eyes softened, a flicker of gratitude passing through them, but she held her salute in return, her posture unwavering. In that shared gesture, they were not strangers but comrades, bound by a legacy that no mockery could diminish. 28 years ago, in a dusty Texas town where the horizon seemed to stretch endlessly, Lauren Kim's story began. Her parents, Korean immigrants barely out of their teens, poured their dreams and fears into a small grocery store that teetered on the edge of collapse. Every day was a battle against mounting debts, and the weight of their struggles pressed heavily on Lauren's young shoulders. College felt like a distant mirage, out of reach for a family drowning in financial strain. Against her parents' desperate pleas for her to choose a path of safety, perhaps a quiet job in an office or a marriage to someone stable, Lauren made a choice that shattered their expectations. She enlisted in the Army, trading the familiarity of home for the uncertainty of a soldier's life. Her parents' faces, etched with worry, haunted her as they imagined their slight, determined daughter shouldering a rifle in far-off wars. Yet, Lauren's heart burned with a quiet resolve to carve her own way, to prove she could carry more than their fears. In the Army, Lauren didn't just survive. She thrived, defying every limit placed on her. Ranger School, a grueling crucible that broke even the toughest recruits, became her proving ground. She pushed through exhaustion, hunger, and the skepticism of peers who saw her small frame and doubted her strength. Gender barriers crumbled under her relentless drive, and she earned her commission as an officer, a badge of her unyielding will. Between 2009 and 2014, she deployed to Afghanistan 3 times, navigating a world of chaos and danger. Her petite stature, once seen as a liability, became her edge. She slipped through tight spaces, moved with precision, and outmaneuvered threats with a tactical mind that silenced doubters. Her male comrades, who had once questioned her place among them, came to rely on her sharp instincts and unshakable courage. Lauren didn't demand their respect. She earned it, one mission at a time, her quiet competence speaking louder than any words. The defining moment of her life came on September 15, 2012, in the scorched landscape of Kandahar province. Her convoy was ambushed, an IED tearing through their vehicles and plunging 12 soldiers into a kill zone swarming with Taliban fighters. Shrapnel ripped through Lauren's legs, the pain searing and relentless, but her mind stayed clear. Focused on the screams of her trapped comrades, for 4 agonizing hours she crawled through a hail of bullets, her body screaming in protest, her heart pounding with the singular purpose of saving her team. One by one she dragged wounded soldiers to safety, her hands slick with blood, her breath ragged but determined. She held their position, refusing to yield, until backup arrived to pull them from the jaws of death. Every soldier in her unit survived because of her. 18 months later, in a moment that felt both surreal and heavy, the president placed the Medal of Honor around her neck. Lauren stood tall, her heart swelling with pride, but also aching for the comrades she'd lost in earlier deployments, their faces never far from her thoughts. But the medal, a symbol of her sacrifice, came with a shadow. Recognition brought relentless scrutiny, a barrage of questions that cut deeper than any shrapnel. Was her heroism real, or was she just a token, a poster girl for a politically motivated agenda? The whispers followed her everywhere: airports, military conferences, even quiet moments in hotel lobbies. Strangers, from hotel clerks to fellow veterans, questioned the authenticity of her medal, their doubts laced with condescension. Some suggested her award was a quota filler, a nod to diversity rather than merit. Others, unable to reconcile her small frame with tales of heroism, dismissed her deeds outright. Each jab chipped away at her, stirring a quiet storm of frustration and hurt. Yet, Lauren carried sacred reminders of her service close to her heart. A photograph of fallen comrades, their smiles frozen in time. A handwritten letter from the 12 soldiers she saved, their words a lifeline in her darkest moments. And a silver coin, etched with Valor Sisterhood, one of only 7 ever crafted for female Medal of Honor recipients. These talismans anchored her, a shield against the world's cruelty. The pain wasn't new. For years, Lauren had endured a relentless cycle of doubt and humiliation. At a veterans conference in Dallas last month, a male Army colonel, his breath heavy with whiskey, cornered her at the bar. His voice dripped with skepticism as he leaned in, demanding the real story of Kandahar. Did she truly do what they claimed, or was she just the Army's convenient hero? His words stung, a betrayal from someone who should have understood the weight of her sacrifice. But the deepest wounds came from unexpected places. That morning in a crowded airport terminal, a mother traveling with her teenage daughter whispered loudly enough for Lauren to hear, her tone dismissive. "See, honey, you don't need to push yourself like that, woman. It's not worth the stress." The words landed like a slap, stripping away Lauren's pride and leaving her raw, exposed to the judgment of strangers. Yet in that same terminal, something began to shift. A disabled boy, perhaps 14, sat in a wheelchair, his eyes initially narrowed with doubt as he watched the scene unfold. His mother, an elderly woman whose faded Women's Army Corps pin glinted on her sweater, knelt beside him, her voice trembling with conviction. "That's what real courage looks like, Michael," she said, loud enough for nearby passengers to turn their heads. "I served in Korea when they told women we couldn't handle combat." This woman proved them all wrong. When the boy's face softened, his skepticism giving way to a quiet awe that stirred something hopeful in Lauren's chest. Among the college students filming the confrontation, a young woman lowered her phone, her expression uneasy. She tugged at her boyfriend's sleeve, her voice low but firm. "Stop filming this. This feels wrong." Her boyfriend scoffed, chasing viral fame. But she stepped away, her small act of decency a flicker of light in Lauren's darkness. A businessman in a tailored suit, initially amused by the spectacle, began to study Lauren more closely. Something in her posture, the way she stood tall despite the weight of humiliation, sparked a memory. He'd served in Iraq as a Marine reservist, and he recognized the quiet discipline of someone forged in combat. His smirk faded, replaced by a nod of respect, unspoken but profound. Around Lauren, symbols of her service stood like silent guardians. Her wooden cane, carved from timber, salvaged from the Afghan outpost where she'd made her stand, was more than a mobility aid. It was a testament to her resilience, crafted by the grateful father of a soldier she'd saved. Each knot in the wood told a story of survival, of a woman who refused to break, no matter the cost. The letter in Lauren's bank was no ordinary paper. It held the signatures of 12 men whose lives she had saved, each name a monument to a moment when she'd defied death itself. Their gratitude was etched in every shaky loop and line, a permanent reminder of the blood and fire she'd walked through to bring them home. The silver coin pinned to her jacket caught the airport's fluorescent glare, its gleam a badge of belonging to a sisterhood few could claim. Women who had stared into the abyss of war and walked away carrying its scars. Her blue shirt, unassuming at first glance, was chosen with care, its hue an exact match to the army dress uniform she'd worn when her medal was pinned to her chest. That color was her quiet rebellion against the civilian world's forgetfulness, a way to carry her service close, even now, when her body ached and her cane bore the weight of old wounds. Lauren sat at the gate, her cane a steady companion, her knee unyielding despite the pain that never quite left. She felt the crowd's fleeting glances, some curious, some dismissive, but she was used to being unseen. Then Sam's voice, loud and mocking, shattered the terminal's background noise. "Bet they gave her a participation trophy," he jeered, his words slicing through the air like a blade. "You know how it is. Everyone gets a medal for just showing up." The laughter that followed was uncertain, a ripple of unease masked by Sam's swagger. He was playing to the crowd, feeding off their amusement, blind to the pain he inflicted. Lauren's jaw tightened, but she held her ground, her eyes blazing with a fire that burned hotter than his scorn. She didn't speak, didn't move, her silence a fortress against his cruelty. An elderly veteran stood, his face a roadmap of a life spent in service. His salute was crisp, unwavering, aimed at Lauren with a reverence that silenced the crowd. Tears carved paths down his weathered cheeks, but his voice rang clear. "This is what honor looks like." The words landed like a judge's gavel, cutting through the jeers. Lauren's salute wasn't just respect. It was kinship, a shared understanding of the price they'd both paid. Her chest tightened, memories of fallen comrades flickering at her mind's edge. But she nodded, her acknowledgement subtle but profound. His gesture anchored her. A lifeline in the storm of Sam's taunts grew bolder, fueled by the crowd's approval. "Look, everybody," he crowed, gesturing toward Lauren. "This is what happens when the military goes woke. They give out trophies to make everyone feel special." College students cheered, phones flashing as they recorded, one shouting, "Maybe she got it for the best sandwiches in the mess hall." Another added, "Or the best morale events." The laughter turned vicious, spreading fast. Sam reached for Lauren's medal, his fingers inches from the ribbon. "Let's see the fine print. I bet it says participant, not valor." Lauren's grip on her cane turned her knuckles white, but she stayed silent, her dignity a steel wall. Her eyes burned, not with shame but with a resolve forged in battle. A flight attendant froze nearby, her heart racing as she recognized the veteran's salute. Her grandfather's Korean War stories flooded back, his voice breaking when he spoke of sacrifice. She couldn't move, transfixed by Lauren's quiet strength. An off-duty officer in the crowd studied Lauren's medal, noting its ribbon's quality, the medallion's weight, her unconscious reverence. His skepticism waned, replaced by respect. Then, 10 minutes after Sam's mockery began, the terminal's speakers crackled. "All passengers, please rise." The command stilled everyone. Outside, 4 military jeeps formed a precise line, their flags snapping in the breeze, a signal of ceremony. Soldiers in flawless dress blues, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, stepped out, their movements sharp, disciplined. Leading them was Colonel Elena Rodriguez, her uniform a tapestry of valor, the Congressional Medal of Honor catching the sunlight. As the first woman to earn it in Iraq, her presence was a weight of history. She moved toward the terminal, her eyes searching for Lauren, her bearing resolute. Lauren felt the shift, the jeers fading into silence. She didn't know who approached, but the jeep stirred memories of unity, purpose, and pain. Sam's bravado crumbled, the crowd's laughter replaced by unease, as the truth of Lauren's courage dawned. As the terminal's speakers transitioned to a gentle instrumental rendition of God Bless America, a subtle shift rippled through the bustling atmosphere of Gate B-47. The military delegation approached with measured steps, their presence commanding attention long before they crossed the threshold. The polished floor reflected their disciplined march, each footfall a quiet declaration of purpose that seemed to still the air itself. Conversations faltered, laughter faded, and a profound silence settled over the gate area, as though the terminal had transformed into a sacred space. Passengers who moments ago had been absorbed in their own worlds, scrolling phones, chasing children, or sipping overpriced coffee, now paused, sensing the weight of something momentous unfolding before them. Colonel Maria Rodriguez led the delegation, her posture radiating authority honed by years of navigating high-stakes environments. Her dark eyes swept across the scene, sharp and discerning, taking in every detail with the precision of a battlefield tactician. She noted the elderly World War II veteran, his trembling hand still raised in a salute, his weathered face etched with pride and sorrow. She saw Major Lauren Kim seated with a quiet grace that belied the storm of emotions within her, her hands folded tightly in her lap to mask their faint tremor. And she observed Sam, the gate agent, standing rigid behind the counter, his earlier confidence now crumbling under the weight of her gaze. Rodriguez's jaw tightened, a flicker of restrained fury passing across her face as she processed the injustice that had just transpired. She approached Sam first, her boots clicking sharply against the floor, each step a deliberate punctuation in the silence. Her voice, when she spoke, carried the unmistakable edge of command, laced with a barely contained anger that made the air feel electric. "Do you have any idea who you just disrespected?" she asked, her words slicing through the stillness. Sam's face drained of color, his earlier bravado evaporating as he stammered, I was just, she..." His voice faltered, unable to find footing under the colonel's piercing stare. Rodriguez didn't wait for him to finish. Raising her voice so it carried across the terminal, she declared, "That woman is Major Lauren Kim, recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor. She crawled through enemy fire for 4 agonizing hours, her legs shattered, to save 12 American soldiers who would have perished without her courage." The words landed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the crowd. Passengers who had been filming the earlier confrontation, eager to capture a moment of petty drama for social media, now froze, their phones suddenly heavy in their hands. The realization dawned that they had not only witnessed but contributed to the dishonoring of a true American hero. Shame replaced their earlier amusement, and a few lowered their devices, unable to meet the gaze of those around them. The terminal, once alive with the hum of casual indifference, now pulsed with a collective reckoning. Rodriguez turned sharply, her Medal of Honor glinting under the harsh fluorescent lights, a symbol of sacrifice that seemed to draw every eye. "Major Kim," she said, executing a flawless about-face toward Lauren, her voice softening but losing none of its power. "On behalf of every woman who has ever worn this uniform, and every soldier who has stood for this nation, I salute you." In perfect unison, the 10 soldiers behind her snapped to attention, their salutes crisp and unwavering. The elderly veteran, tears carving paths down his wrinkled cheeks, held his salute with a renewed strength, as though drawing from a well of resolve he hadn't tapped in decades. The scene was a quiet but seismic reversal of the humiliation that had unfolded moments before. Slowly, the passengers began to respond, their actions tentative at first, but growing in conviction. A businessman, his tie slightly askew, stood abruptly, his posture shifting to one of military precision. He'd served in Iraq years ago, and the weight of Lauren's sacrifice stirred memories of comrades lost and battles fought. He saluted, his hands steady despite the emotion in his eyes. A flight attendant, her name tag glinting under the lights, placed a trembling hand over her heart, thinking of her grandfather who had served in Korea. Her lips moved silently, forming words of gratitude she couldn't voice. A mother wearing a small Army Corps pin on her jacket gently helped her disabled son adjust in his wheelchair. The boy, his face alight with determination, raised a shaky hand in an attempt at a salute, his mother's eyes brimming with pride. Even some of the college students, who had been quick to laugh and record earlier, now stood, their faces flushed with the dawning realization of their mistake. The weight of the moment pressed on them, a lesson in humility they hadn't expected to learn in an airport terminal. One young woman from the group, her phone now tucked away, stepped forward, her voice trembling, but resolute. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry," she said, her eyes locked on Lauren. "I was laughing, and I shouldn't have been. You're a real hero, and I was part of something awful." Her words hung in the air, raw and unguarded, a small but genuine step toward amends. Sam, still behind the counter, tried to speak, his voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know. I thought, I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate even as they left his mouth, and he winced under Rodriguez's unyielding gaze. "Your apology isn't enough," she replied, her tone cold but not cruel. "You need to understand the gravity of what you've done. You dishonored a woman who embodies the very best of what this country stands for." Her words weren't just for Sam, but for everyone within earshot, a call to reflect on the values they claimed to uphold. The security guard who had earlier mocked Lauren now stood quietly, his cap removed and pressed against his chest. "Ma'am, we failed you today," he said, his voice thick with regret. "That's on all of us." His admission was a small but significant acknowledgement, a crack in the armor of indifference that had allowed the earlier injustice to unfold. In a moment that seemed to crystallize the day's transformation, Colonel Rodriguez reached into her uniform pocket and withdrew a small silver coin, its surface catching the light. It was identical to the one Lauren carried, a medallion of the Valor Sisterhood, a symbol of courage passed among women who had faced unimaginable trials. "Major Kim," Rodriguez said, her voice steady but warm, "this that belongs to you. Pass it forward someday to another girl who has survived." Lauren rose slowly, her movements deliberate, accepting the coin with a hand that was no longer shaking. The weight of the medallion felt like an anchor, grounding her in the midst of the terminal's reverence. Her gaze drifted across the crowd, landing on a young boy in a wheelchair. His eyes were filled, witty with awe and something deeper, an understanding that heroes weren't defined by physical strength, but by the choices they made. Without hesitation, Lauren crossed the terminal, her steps steady despite the ache in her leg, a reminder of the wounds she'd carried since that fateful day. She knelt beside the boy, her voice soft but clear, carrying a warmth that seemed to wrap around him. "Courage isn't about standing up or walking perfectly," she said, placing the coin gently in his small hand. "It's about doing what's right." In the bustling chaos of Atlanta's airport, a young boy named Michael gripped a silver coin tightly in his small hands, his eyes wide with awe. The coin, a gift from Lauren, a female veteran, shimmered with a weight far beyond its metal. To Michael, it wasn't just a token. It was a symbol of valor, a tangible piece of courage passed from one hero to another. His heart swelled with pride, his young mind grappling with the profound meaning of the gesture. He sat in his wheelchair, fingers tracing the coin's edges, feeling as though he'd been entrusted with something sacred. Lauren's act of kindness had ignited a spark in him, a belief that he, too, could be brave despite his limitations. From the crowded terminal, a pure, unwavering voice pierced the air. A 6-year-old girl, her tiny frame barely visible among the sea of travelers, began singing the Star-Spangled Banner. Her voice, clear and unblemished, rang out with an innocence that silenced the noise of the airport. It was as if the terminal itself held its breath, captivated by her melody. First, the veterans in the crowd joined in, their weathered voices carrying the weight of sacrifice. Then, other passengers, strangers united by the moment, added their voices until Gate B47 became a chorus of unity. The song swelled, filling the space with a shared sense of pride and purpose. Phones that had once recorded mockery now captured this fleeting, beautiful moment of national solidarity. For those present, it felt like a reclamation of something lost, a reminder of what it meant to stand together. Behind his counter, Sam, a young airport employee, stood frozen. Tears streamed down his face, each one heavy with shame. He had been part of the crowd that mocked Lauren, laughing at her wooden cane and dismissing her service. Now, as the anthem echoed and the crowd's unity enveloped the terminal, he felt the crushing weight of his actions. The realization hit him like a tidal wave. He had disrespected someone who had sacrificed so much. His heart ached with regret, and his tears were not just for himself but for the part he had played in a moment of cruelty. The magnitude of Lauren's courage and the unity it inspired left him humbled and broken. News crews descended on the airport within minutes, alerted by passengers posting on social media. The story spread like wildfire, carried by the hashtag had two medals, one nation. What had begun as a moment of humiliation transformed into one of redemption, a powerful testament to unity over division, honor over mockery. Atlanta's airport, moved by the outpouring of support, declared Honor Her Valor Day, with Lauren named as its official ambassador. Her story became a beacon for students and young veterans, a call to recognize courage in all its forms. The terminal where she had faced ridicule was transformed into a shrine to bravery, her photograph displayed prominently alongside the message, "She stood for us all." Every staff member was required to pen handwritten apologies to Lauren, and every female veteran disrespected in the past, a gesture meant to acknowledge the pain caused and commit to change. Sam, terminated from his job, recorded a public apology video that went viral, not for its spectacle, but for its raw sincerity. He poured out his regret, his voice trembling as he vowed to learn from his mistakes. The silver coin Lauren had given Michael became a symbol far greater than itself. A photograph of him in his wheelchair, clutching the Valor Sisterhood medallion while saluting Lauren, graced the cover of Time magazine. The headline, "Courage Has No Limits," captured the nation's imagination. Michael's mother, a former Women's Army Corps veteran, found herself on national television, sharing her story. Her voice was steady but emotional as she spoke of recognizing true heroism in Lauren when others saw only weakness. Her words sparked a nationwide conversation about the treatment of female veterans, challenging stereotypes and demanding respect. She felt a quiet pride in her son, whose small act of saluting Lauren had touched so many, and in Lauren, whose strength had reshaped their lives. A college student who had stopped filming the mockery and apologized to Lauren was inspired to act. Her guilt transformed into purpose, leading her to found Women Respect Women, a campus organization dedicated to supporting female veterans and combating gender discrimination. Within months, chapters sprang up at universities across the country, each one a testament to the ripple effect of Lauren's courage. The young woman often reflected on that day in the airport, her heart heavy with the memory of her initial complicity, but lifted by the change she was helping to create. A businessman, a former Marine who had recognized Lauren's military bearing, was moved to action. He launched the Valor Veterans Initiative at his company, a program focused on hiring female veterans, particularly those facing discrimination in civilian careers. His initiative became a model for Fortune 500 companies, each adopting similar programs to honor and uplift women who had served. He often thought of Lauren, her quiet strength, a reminder of the resilience he'd seen in his own service. And he felt a deep sense of purpose in ensuring others like her were given the opportunities they deserved. The transformation reached even the youngest and oldest among them. Michael, now a youth ambassador for disabled veterans, spoke at schools across the country. His voice, though young, carried a quiet authority as he shared how courage could manifest in countless ways. He kept Lauren's coin on his desk, a constant reminder that heroes come in all forms. Showing it to visitors, he'd smile and say, "This is proof." His heart swelled with pride each time he spoke, knowing he was part of something bigger. An elderly World War II veteran, the first to salute Lauren in the terminal, started weekly gatherings at the airport for traveling veterans. These informal meetings became a lifeline for those disconnected from their service communities, a place to share stories and find camaraderie. The airport management, inspired by his dedication, provided a dedicated space called Honor Hall. The veteran, his hands trembling with age but his spirit unyielding, felt a renewed sense of purpose, knowing he was helping others find their way home. Lauren and Colonel Rodriguez, a fellow veteran, stood side by side at a White House ceremony honoring women of valor throughout American military history. Michael, their special guest, watched with wide eyes, his coin clutched tightly in his hand. The moment felt like a bridge across generations, a testament to how courage inspires no matter the circumstances. The viral video clips from that day were woven into a documentary short, 2 Medals, 1 Mission, which became required viewing in military leadership courses and gender studies programs. It captured not just the humiliation and redemption, but the broader transformation in how society understood heroism. Lauren's wooden cane, carved from Afghan timber, found a place in the Smithsonian's National Museum, a quiet symbol of resilience and sacrifice. 6 months had elapsed since that unforgettable Sunday at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, a morning that began with shame but ignited a quiet transformation. The impact of Major Lauren Kim's experience had reshaped not only the terminal, but the perspectives of countless individuals. At the Museum of American History, her Congressional Medal of Honor, now shown in the Courage in All Forms exhibit. A plaque beside it recounted how a woman, undeterred by physical constraints, saved 12 soldiers through relentless dedication. Lauren, 39, stood before the display, her heart swelling not for her own recognition, but for the men whose lives she'd safeguarded, their gratitude now shared through QR-coded video testimonials. The airport itself had erected a memorial wall honoring female service members, with Lauren's image at its heart. Framed by stories of other women who'd served, it stood as a testament to their sacrifices. For Lauren, touching the engraved names, it was a vow that no veteran would face ridicule again. The memory of those she'd saved, each face, each moment, grounded her amidst growing global attention. Her story crossed oceans when the British royal family invited her to speak at a ceremony for Allied female military members. In London, with 14-year-old Michael in the front row, Lauren declared, "Heroism doesn't care about gender, age, or limits." Her voice carried the weight of her journey. Michael, clutching the silver coin she'd given him, felt invincible. His mother, a former Women's Army Corps member, watched with tears, seeing her own service honored through Lauren's example. In the U.S., Lauren's law mandated sensitivity training for airport staff, ensuring respect for military honors. Plaques explaining the Medal of Honor now adorn transportation hubs, educating passers-by. Lauren recalled Sam Rodriguez, the 28-year-old gate agent whose mockery had stung. She hoped the training would teach him to see the stories behind the medals. Michael's silver coin inspired a best-selling children's book on courage, its proceeds funding scholarships for children of disabled veterans. Now 15, Michael, a youth ambassador, spoke with confidence, his disability a part of his strength. "Lauren showed me I could be brave," he told audiences, his mother's pride echoing her own service in a time when women were often unseen. On Women of Valor Day at the airport, Lauren addressed veterans, students, and leaders. 6 months ago at Gate B47, people doubted a woman could earn this honor, she said, her voice steady. She thought of the college students' laughter, the security guards' regret, the businessman's quiet nod. "Courage doesn't need permission to be female," she said, pointing to the diverse crowd. "When we judge heroes by gender, we dishonor our values." The applause roared, and Colonel Elena Rodriguez nodded in solidarity. Lauren touched her medal. "Respect is what we owe everyone, because one day you might need someone to see your worth." Boss letters flooded the airport. A California woman defending a veteran, a Texas businessman hiring veterans, a Maine grandfather teaching his grandchildren. Michael held up his coin, grinning. The Atlanta airport became a symbol of respect reborn. Respect. First policies spread nationwide, and millions learned that strength comes in unexpected forms. A 6-year-old's anthem, a boy's courage, a veteran's resolve. As Lauren stepped down, Michael's smile was her greatest victory. The room buzzed with a quiet reverence as Lauren surveyed the transformed space around her. The walls, once bare and unremarkable, now stood as a testament to resilience and sacrifice. Photographs of women who had served in uniform through the decades lined the room, their faces etched with determination, pride, and quiet defiance. Interspersed among the images were handwritten testimonials from families whose lives had been touched by these women, letters brimming with gratitude, stories of loss and love, and words that carried the weight of generations. At the center of it all was a permanent memorial, a solemn tribute to every soul who had served, their names carved into stone with an unyielding permanence. Lauren's heart swelled with a mix of pride and sorrow as she traced her fingers along the edges of the memorial, her mind drifting to the battles fought, not just on distant fields, but in the quieter, more personal arenas of doubt, prejudice, and dismissal. She had never set out to be a catalyst for change. In her mind, she was still the young woman who had enlisted with a fire in her chest, determined to prove herself in a world that often looked past her. But somewhere along the way, through the grit of combat and the sting of being underestimated, she had learned a truth that burned brighter than any metal. Change begins with a single soul refusing to bow to the idea that disrespect is just part of the deal. Standing there surrounded by the stories of those who had come before her, Lauren felt a quiet resolve settle into her bones. She wasn't alone in this fight. Not anymore. As she stepped to the podium, the crowd fell silent, their eyes fixed on her with a mixture of awe and anticipation. Her voice, steady but laced with the raw emotion of someone who had lived every word she spoke, filled the room. Change doesn't come from grand gestures or loud declarations, she began, her gaze sweeping across the sea of faces. It comes from one person, in one moment, deciding that enough is enough. Today, I'm asking each of you to be that person. In your homes, in your workplaces, in your communities, stand up, speak out, and refuse to let anyone tell you that honor has boundaries. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning, and for a moment, time seemed to pause. Then, like a wave breaking against the shore, the room erupted into applause. The ovation roared on for 7 minutes, a tidal force of sound that shook the walls and sent shivers down Lauren's spine. She stood there, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. In that moment, she wasn't just Major Kim, the decorated officer who had faced down enemies both foreign and domestic. She was every woman who had ever been told she didn't belong, every soldier who had carried the weight of invisibility, every heart that had dared to hope for something better. The applause wasn't just for her, it was for them, for all of them. Outside, the streets were a mosaic of parked cars stretching for blocks, a silent testament to the hundreds who had traveled from across the region. They hadn't come merely to observe a ceremony or mark a moment in time. They had come to be part of something bigger, a movement that proved ordinary moments, when infused with courage and conviction, could ripple outward to create extraordinary change. As the crowd began to thin, their voices still humming with the energy of what they'd witnessed, a young journalist pushed through the throng, her notebook clutched tightly in her hand. She was barely out of college, her eyes wide with the kind of earnestness that reminded Lauren of herself years ago. "Major Kim," she called out, her voice cutting through the fading chatter. "One last question. What do you hope people take away from this story? What do you want them to remember most?" Lauren paused, her lips curving into a smile that held the weight of 1,000 memories. It was the same quiet strength that had carried her through the chaos of combat, through the sleepless nights when doubt gnawed at her resolve, through the moments when she'd had to stand taller than the world expected her to. Now that strength shone through her, radiant with confidence and a hard-won hope that felt like sunlight breaking through a storm. "I want them to remember that honor doesn't care about gender," she said, her voice soft but unyielding, "that courage doesn't come in one shape or size, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to let anyone make you or someone else feel like you don't matter." The journalist scribbled furiously, her pen racing to capture every word, but Lauren's gaze had already drifted to the horizon. She thought of the women whose faces adorned the walls inside, of the families who had found solace in their stories, of the countless others who would walk through that room in the years to come. This wasn't the end of the story, it was only the beginning, and as the last of the crowd dispersed, their footsteps echoing into the evening, Lauren felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. They had told their story, but it was the people who had given it meaning, and for that, she was endlessly grateful.